Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here, the 3 Topics Gamer here to give you a quick little discussion video to share with you guys today. As some of you guys are aware of, or maybe you guys missed it, but yesterday they had the Road to PlayStation 5 little small contained kind of, I'm not sure if it was a conference, but it was more of an information dump. Basically just giving us some information in more or less the specs of what the PlayStation 5 was going to have, and just some initial data on how things were going to work and what were some improvements and all that good stuff. But before we jump into my thoughts on the overall presentation itself, if you happen to like this video by the end, please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up and press that subscribe button to help grow the channel, because every subscription counts. And now that is out of the way, jumping into my overall impressions of this presentation. Now, to be frank, you guys know, some of you who have been watching me for years know I'm probably one of the biggest PlayStation fanboys that you will ever find on the internet. And I can openly say that overall, I found this presentation quite boring, because it was a classic case of a lot of telling but not showing. Now, look, I understood firsthand that this was just going to talk about specs, but I was disappointed that A, you didn't tell me anything that isn't kind of obvious, and B, that you had no visual examples to go along with the presentation. Now, again, I didn't expect to see anything concrete. I did not expect to see what the console was going to look like. I didn't expect to see what the control was going to look like. I didn't even expect to see any new trailers or any gameplay of a PlayStation 5 game. I didn't expect any of that. But what I did expect to see is at least some visual example in some sense to at least give us an idea of what they're trying to explain. Now, the presenter guy was, I think he did a pretty solid job at being very, very direct and being informative. But when he went over all of the specs, and he went over just how the visuals were going to work, and how the audio was going to work, and how the machine was going to run, and how load screen times were just a thing, were not going to be present. The problem is that all of that pretty much summed up to the statement that the PlayStation 5 was going to run faster and better than the PlayStation 4 Pro, or the PlayStation 4 in general. The problem is that's a given. Every single generation is supposed to improve on the prior one. So if you were to tell me, the PlayStation 4 is going to run better than the PlayStation 3. The PlayStation 3 is going to run better than the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 is going to run better than the PlayStation 1. That's obvious. It's supposed to do that. And I may be wrong about this statement. Now I'm just speaking from my own personal opinion experience, but I may be completely wrong on this, and if I am, please let me know in the comments section. But I'm a fair believer that the mass majority of people who are going to buy this console and play it do not care about specs. I do not care how a piece of technology works. I just care that it does work. Clear example. Now, I recently just upgraded my phone and went from a Samsung S9 Plus to a Samsung S20. Now, I've been using this phone for the past almost about 2 years. And I've had this phone for about a week. I can tell you this right now. I have no damn clue what the specs are for out of these phones. I cannot tell you how one works over the other. The only thing I can tell you about this phone is that A, it's got 3 lenses instead of 1, and the buttons are in a different position. Other than that, how it performs, how it works, I can't tell the difference between the S20 and the S9 Plus. I'm not doing anything more with this phone than I wasn't with my S9 Plus. I don't care how this phone works. I just care that it does work. And it has worked very, very well for this past week. And that's how I feel about consoles in general. I don't care about the specs. I just care that the system works. And it's just kind of upsetting that we did not get anything. It's amazing that they actually showed us more for the PlayStation 5 at the VGAs than they did in this presentation. And in fact, I think Microsoft is gonna take note of this and do a lot of showing. Again, as I said earlier, it's a classic case of show, don't tell. Please, give us some examples. I mean, the biggest example that they mentioned was when he was talking about audio and how they were going to try to work on 3D audio. And, you know, they used Dead Space as an example. And I think the example that he used was actually a pretty good one. The problem is that when it comes to audio and sound quality, I don't think it really applies unless you have a surround sound system, or if you're like me, you tend to use a specific type of headphones that is actually made for that type of experience. And you know, not everyone can get their hands on headphones. So I think the whole audio thing is a little bit off because, heck, not everyone is going to have, you know, a top-level surround sound system or headphones to actually go with their game playing experience. So I felt that was a bit off. And on top of that, here's something that I also found very, very disappointing. I'm not sure if this was just 100% confirmed, but from what they said when it comes to backwards compatibility, it sounds like the PlayStation 5 is only going to be backwards compatible with the PlayStation 4. And if I remember correctly, I think they said that only like a small amount of games are even going to be backwards compatible. That's disappointing. I heard 100 games, and then I heard some people say, oh, it's the number of games of backwards compatibility is going to increase with time, which, if that's the case, okay. But I was really hoping we would at least go as far back as PlayStation 3. The fact that the PlayStation 4 was not backwards compatible at all was probably the biggest flaw that I've seen with the PlayStation 4. So I thought that the PlayStation 5 might fix that mistake. It looks like it is, but not to the extent that I was hoping for. So as it stands right now, I'm already a little bit disappointed in the PlayStation 5, and I haven't even seen it yet. And on top of that, with the amount of detail that he was going into about what this console is going to be able to do and just how much of a performance improvement it's going to be over the PlayStation 4, I'm a little bit concerned about the cost, because just from what I saw and what he was explaining, this sounds like this PlayStation 5 is easily going to be a $500 or even $600 machine, which I'm telling you right now, as big of a PlayStation fanboy as I am not ashamed to say I am, there is no way in hell I am spending $500 on a console. I have never spent more than $400, not including tax, on a video game console in my life, and I do not plan to start now. I waited a whole year before my parents got me a PlayStation 2. I waited 2 years before I got my own PlayStation 3. The PlayStation 4 was actually the very first console that I ever actually picked up at launch. And having done that, I can openly say that I don't think I needed to get the PlayStation 4 at launch. I actually probably could have waited a good 6 or 9 months before a proper title, which I believe would be a must-play title, came out. And I think that's how I feel right now about the PlayStation 5. I do not think I'm going to pick up a PlayStation 5 at launch. I might wait a number of months and either wait for a price drop or for a must-play title to come out. I do not think we're going to get one at launch, no matter what it is. Because typically those first number of games typically aren't going to run the best, and you really want to wait until a console has its footing before you pick it up and start playing games that are specifically made for that console. And that's just how I feel about it in general. So overall, this presentation was just kind of disappointing to me. And believe it or not, I actually heard people in the chat that I was watching, because I was watching this live, people were falling asleep, people found it boring, and I perfectly understand why, because I found it boring, and there was nothing that they told me that I didn't already expect. I did not get any new information that I genuinely cared about, and I find that very disappointing. And at this point, there's even a little bit of me that's afraid that the PlayStation 5 might not even come out this year. They might push this back till the next year, which, heck, if that happens, man, I think Sony might be stumbling a little bit. And heck, this is going to be the prime moment for Microsoft to really step their game up and take advantage of this moment of opportunity. And heck, I do not think that whenever Microsoft does their next presentation, I do not think they're going to make this mistake. I think they're going to focus on doing a lot more showing than telling than Sony did for this particular press conference. So those are just my thoughts on the road to PlayStation 5 first presentation. If you happen to see it too, what were your thoughts on it? Are you planning on getting a PlayStation 5 when it launches, or are you going to wait a little bit longer and wait for either a price drop if it does end up being like a $500 or $600 console, or are you going to wait for a price drop? Share your thoughts with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I will see you next time.